My name is Sloane Mercer. I'm 29. On November 24th, 2024, at 6:18 p.m., my father turned Thanksgiving dinner into the last conversation we would have for a very long time. In front of 11 family members, he pushed back from the table, pointed at the door, and said, "I think you should go. And don't bother coming back until you've figured out how to be a real adult." The room didn't defend me, it watched. My older brother, the golden one, pressed his lips together like he was trying not to smile. My mother busied herself refilling a water glass that was already full. My aunt pretended she hadn't heard. I didn't yell back. I didn't cry. I folded my napkin, set it on the table, picked up my coat from the hook by the door, and walked out into a November that was 29 degrees and getting colder. They thought they'd put me in my place. They thought I'd call by Sunday, apologize, say I understood where they were coming from. They had no idea that in 17 days, the Wall Street Journal would publish a story with my name in the headline. They had no idea I'd been sitting across from them at that table, every holiday for 2 years, carrying a secret they never once thought to ask about. Let me tell you about the Mercer family. In our house, there was one definition of success, and it had a very specific shape. My grandfather built Mercer and Associates, a civil engineering firm in Columbus, Ohio in 1971. My father, Robert Mercer, took it over in 1998 and grew it to 200 employees. My uncle ran the Cincinnati branch. My brother, who is 33, is VP of Operations. He has a business card with the family name on it. He has a parking spot with his name on a placard. I was supposed to have one too. I have a degree in civil engineering from Ohio State. I worked at Mercer and Associates for 14 months after graduation. My father introduced me at every company event as our next generation. My mother told people at church that both her children were in the business. It made her happy in a way I hadn't seen since my grandmother's funeral, when people said nice things about the family. I quit in April of 2022. I didn't quit because I couldn't do the work. I quit because I'd spent 14 months watching the construction industry lose millions of dollars to inefficiency project management tools that didn't talk to each other, contractors submitting change orders on paper forms, billing disputes that dragged on for months because nobody had a shared source of truth. I built a small internal tool on the side to track one project's subcontractor payments. It saved the project manager 11 hours a week. He told me it was the most useful thing anyone had given him in 15 years. I thought about that for a long time. My father didn't take it well when I resigned. "You're walking away from a company your grandfather built," he said. I told him I wasn't walking away from the family, just from the role. He looked at me the way you look at someone who has said something not just wrong, but embarrassingly naive. "This is what you do when things get hard," he said. "You leave." I didn't argue. I took my laptop and my 2 monitors and moved into a 900 square foot apartment in Columbus's Short North neighborhood, and I got to work. What they saw over the next 2 years, a daughter who had gone off to do her own thing, which in my mother's vocabulary was a polite way of saying she had no idea what I did and had stopped trying to find out. At holidays, when relatives asked, she'd say, "Sloane does software, tech stuff." The way she said tech stuff made it sound like I assembled smartphones in a warehouse. What they didn't see, I had co-founded a construction tech startup called Fieldline, B2B SaaS project management and payment infrastructure for mid-sized commercial contractors. My co-founder, a developer I'd met at a Columbus tech meetup, handled the engineering. I handled everything else: sales, product, customer success, the pitch deck we took to 12 VCs before someone finally said yes. We closed a seed round of $1.8 million in January 2023. By November 2024, Fieldline had 412 paying customers, 91% retention rate, and annualized recurring revenue of $3.4 million. I had also, quietly, made some decisions with my personal savings. I'd put $60,000 into a diversified portfolio of growth equities in early 2023 during a down market when most people I knew were panicking. I am not going to pretend I was a genius. I was disciplined and I was patient. By October 2024, that portfolio was worth $420,000. Not life-changing money by any measure, but proof, to myself, that I understood how value compounds when you stop reacting to noise. My father never asked what I was working on, not once in 2 years. My mother asked once, at Easter 2023. I started to explain and she said, "That's wonderful, honey," and changed the subject to my brother's kitchen renovation. I attended 4 family events in those 2 years. All 4 felt the same. My brother talked about a new contract the company had landed. My father talked about my brother. My mother talked about my brother's wife's new job, and me. I sat at the table and ate and smiled and said almost nothing, because I had learned that they weren't asking questions. They were delivering updates. There was no space in those conversations for anything I might contribute. The Thanksgiving that ended everything started the way they all started. I arrived at my parents' house in Dublin, Ohio at 3 o'clock. My mother opened the door with a dish towel over her shoulder, and the particular expression she saves for when she's been cooking for 6 hours and is already exhausted. "You made it," she said, which was her way of noting that I was the last one there. My brother and his wife were already in the living room. His wife, who I actually like, gave me a real hug. My brother gave me the shoulder pat that men in my family substitute for emotion. My aunt and uncle from Cincinnati were there, their 2 kids, 16 and 19. My father was at the counter opening a bottle of wine and talking about a highway project the company had just been awarded. I sat down at the table. I helped carry dishes. I asked my cousin about school. Everything was fine until dessert. My father had had 3 glasses of wine by then. I know this because I was watching, the way you watch when you know the weather is changing and you're trying to calculate how long you have. He was mid-story about a competitor firm that had bid too low on a county project and was now bleeding cost overruns. He shook his head. This is what happens when people think they can shortcut experience. He looked at me. Some people just need to learn that the hard way. It was aimed at me. We both knew it. "Dad," my brother said quietly, a warning. My father ignored it. "I'm just saying, there's value in building something real, something that lasts. Not every idea someone has in their 20s is worth burning your future over." I kept my voice level. "I'm not burning anything." "No?" He set down his wine glass. 2.5 years, Sloane. 2.5 years since you walked away. What do you have to show for it? What is it exactly that you do?" He made a gesture with his hand, vague, dismissive. "You sell software to construction companies?" "We use 3 different software platforms at Mercer and not one of them works properly. You think you can do better than the companies that have been doing this for 20 years? "I do, actually." He laughed, not a warm sound. "Robert," my mother said, "I'm asking a genuine question." He wasn't. "What is the plan, Sloane? When does this become something? When do you stop pretending you're an entrepreneur and admit that you made a mistake?" My aunt was suddenly very interested in her pie. "I haven't made a mistake," I said. "You walked away from a company your grandfather built. You walked away from a career, a salary, a future." His voice was rising in the particular way it does when he's made a decision and is now just providing narration for it. "You have nothing to show for 2.5 years except an apartment and a laptop." "That's not true." "Then show me. Show the table. What have you built?" He looked around at everyone. "An invitation?" No one spoke. I looked at him. I thought about saying it right then. I thought about opening my phone and showing him the ARR dashboard, the customer list, the note from our lead investor 2 weeks prior that said we were tracking toward a Series A at a valuation I hadn't shared with anyone outside the company. I thought about all of it, and I made a different choice. "I'm not going to perform for the table, Dad." His jaw tightened. "I think you should go. And don't bother coming back until you've figured out how to be a real adult." Silence. Genuine, complete silence. I looked at my brother. He looked at his plate. My mother looked at the centerpiece. My aunt picked up her fork. No one said a word. I stood up. I was calm in a way that surprised even me. I got my coat. I said Happy Thanksgiving to no one in particular, and I left. The drive back to Short North took 22 minutes. I didn't call my co-founder. I didn't call my college roommate, who is the person I call when things go wrong. I just drove, and I thought about the date. December 11th. That was when the Wall Street Journal's Startups to Watch feature was scheduled to publish. My PR contact had confirmed it 3 days ago. The piece had been written. The quotes were approved. The photo was taken. I had 17 days. I got home, made tea, opened my laptop, and answered 43 emails. The first 5 days after Thanksgiving, nothing. My father didn't call. My mother texted on day 3. Hope you're doing okay. That was all. No acknowledgement of what happened. No comma between sorry and anything else, because there was no sorry. My brother texted on day 2. He was out of line. I should have said something. I'm sorry I didn't. I read it 3 times. I wrote back, thank you for saying that. And then I put my phone down. My co-founder was the only one who knew what was coming. She'd been with me through the whole journal process, the interview, the back and forth with the reporter, the photo shoot in our office that we'd only moved into 4 months prior. She texted me on day 4, you ready for the 11th? I wrote back one word, yes. I wasn't nervous, I was precise about it. There is a difference. On day 6, I had a call with 2 partners at a growth equity firm out of Chicago. They had reached out in October after one of our investors mentioned us at a conference. 50-minute call. They asked good questions. I answered them. At the end, one of the partners said, we'd like to come see your operations in January. We're thinking about leading your Series A. Our working valuation target was $22 million. Their interest suggested we might be able to push higher. On day 9, one of our enterprise customers, a commercial contractor out of Nashville with over 80 active projects, expanded their contract. They added 3 subsidiary entities to their account. That single expansion increased our MRR by $14,000. Fieldline was not a dream anymore. It was a machine, and it was running. On day 12, the journal reporter sent me a final confirmation. Publication date, December 11th, 6 a.m. Eastern. Looking forward to the response you're going to get, she wrote. This story is going to travel. I made coffee that morning and watched the sky get light over Columbus and thought about my grandfather, who had built something real with his hands and his name, and whether he would have understood what I was building or whether he would have looked at me the same way my father did. I decided I didn't need to know the answer. December 11th. I woke up at 5:45. I had already been half awake for an hour. I sat at my kitchen table with coffee and my laptop. At exactly 6, I refreshed W's.com. There it was, Startups to Watch 2024, 11 companies. Fieldline was number 4. Fieldline, Columbus, OH. Co-founders Sloane Mercer, 29, and her technical partner have built a construction payment and project management platform serving over 400 contractors nationwide. With ARR exceeding $3 million and a retention rate that rivals enterprise SaaS leaders 3 times their size. Mercer, who left a family civil engineering firm to pursue the idea, says the construction industry is the last major sector running on paper and phone calls. Investors are paying attention. My phone started moving at 6:12. My co-founder called first, laughing. Then our seed investor. Then a number I didn't recognize, which turned out to be a journalist from TechCrunch who had seen the journal piece and wanted to do a follow-up. And 2 LinkedIn messages. Then 11. Then I stopped counting. I did not call my family. I waited. My mother saw it at 8:47. My college roommate told me later that my mother's neighbor, who follows me on LinkedIn for reasons neither of us has ever understood, sent my mother a message. Catherine, your daughter is in the Wall Street Journal. Congratulations. Along with a screenshot. My mother called my father, who was in a meeting. He stepped out. He Googled my name. He found the journal piece. He found the TechCrunch article from 8 months prior that I hadn't told him about. Columbus startup Fieldline raises seed round, targets fragmented construction payments market. He found the podcast interview I'd done in September. He found our company website, which had the customer logos, the product screenshots, the team page with my photo and my co-founder's photo and the 6 people we'd hired in the past year. He looked at all of it for what my mother later told me was a very long time. My brother called me at 9:15. I answered. Sloane, he said. It's in the journal. I know. How long has this been? How long have you been? Since I left. He was quiet. The whole time? The whole time. Another silence. I could hear him processing. I had no idea. I know. Sloane, I should have. He stopped. Dad's not doing well right now. That's not my problem to manage. No, he said. No, I know. Congratulations. I mean it. What you've built is incredible. Thank you. We stayed on the phone for a few more minutes. He asked a question about how SaaS ARR worked. I explained it. It was almost normal. Almost like we were just two people talking. My father called at 11:03. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 2. Voicemail. He called a third time at 6:17. This time I picked up. Sloane. His voice had a quality I hadn't heard from him before. Careful. Like he was walking on a floor he wasn't sure would hold him. Hi, Dad. I saw the article. I know. A pause, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. I didn't know. I know you didn't. You should have told us. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger exactly, more like clarity. I tried to tell you at Easter 2023. You changed the subject. I tried to tell you when I resigned and you told me I was running away from hard things. At what point was I supposed to keep trying? He didn't answer that. I'm not calling to argue, he said. Are you okay? It was the first time he had asked me that in longer than I could track. I'm fine, Dad. I've been fine. We talked for 9 minutes. He didn't apologize, not directly. He said things like I was harder on you than I should have been, and I have a lot of thinking to do. I received these statements without much feeling either way. I had already moved past the place where his approval would have changed anything. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment for a while and thought about how strange it is to be vindicated by something you already knew. The industry response moved fast. Within 48 hours of the journal piece, I had 26 inbound messages from contractors, investors, and enterprise sales prospects. A commercial real estate developer based in Atlanta with 60 active projects requested a demo. 2 VC firms I had pitched and been rejected by in 2023 reached out to reconnect. I responded to the prospects. I archived the VCs. My mother called on day 3 after publication. She was warmer than she'd been in years, which made it easier and harder at the same time. I've been telling everyone, she said. I shared the article on Facebook. I thought about pointing out that she had spent 2 years telling people I did tech stuff. I didn't. Thanks, Mom. Your aunt called, and her father's partner, and Pastor Michael from church. She laughed a little. Everyone wants to know how you did it. I worked hard and I didn't stop. A pause. I should have asked more questions. It was as close as she would come to an apology. I decided to accept it as one. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, my father called again. This time the conversation had a different shape. He had apparently done some research. He had looked at Fieldline's website in detail. He had looked at our customer list. He had found a forum thread on a construction industry site where one of our customers had written an unprompted endorsement of the product. I've been thinking, he said. Mercer and Associates should look at your platform. Seriously. I spoke to our project managers and they're frustrated with the current tools. If what you've built does what they're saying it does. Dad. I'm serious, Sloane. This is a business conversation. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm asking to be a customer. I understood what he was doing. He wanted a way back that didn't require the word sorry. A transaction instead of an apology. I'll have our enterprise sales team reach out, I said. They'll walk you through the process. We treat every prospect the same way. Silence? You're not going to give me any special. No. Another silence. Okay, he said. That's fair. He hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand for a minute. The enterprise sales rep followed up with Mercer and Associates the following Tuesday. Standard demo, standard pricing. My brother was on the call. He emailed me afterward. Your rep is excellent. Product looks great. I think we're gonna move forward. He paused in the email and then added, I'm sorry it took us this long to see what you were doing. I read that one 3 times too. The day after Christmas, I made 2 decisions I had been planning for months. The first was a $25,000 donation to a Columbus nonprofit that runs a 12-week entrepreneurship program for women who are transitioning out of traditional careers, nursing, education, accounting, and want to start technical businesses. The program director, when I called her, cried a little. This is going to fund 2 full cohorts, she said. I asked her not to name anything after me. She asked why. I told her the cause was more important than the credit. The second was a partnership announcement. I had been quietly negotiating for 2 months with a regional construction trade association in Ohio and Kentucky. Fieldline would provide discounted access to their members and co-develop a payment transparency standard for mid-market contractors. It was the kind of thing my grandfather's generation had built the industry's foundation on, a shared standard that made everyone's work easier. I thought about that when I signed the agreement. The Journal reporter asked me later what it had felt like to build Fieldline without my family knowing. I thought about the question for a moment. It felt like having a conversation with yourself, I said. You do the work, you solve the problems, you make the decisions, and you get very clear about why you're doing it because there's nobody around to tell you you're doing it right. Was that lonely? Sometimes. But loneliness isn't the worst thing. The worst thing is building your life around what other people want you to prove and finding out at 40 that you proved it, and it still didn't feel like yours. She used that quote in the follow-up piece. I didn't know she would. My father read it. He called me the next morning at 7:45. I was already at my desk. I read what you said, he said. I know. Was that about me? It was about me. A long pause. I'm proud of you, Sloane. His voice was rough in the way voices get when someone has been rehearsing something and is surprised by how hard it is to say. I don't think I've said that. I should have said it a long time ago. I looked out my window at the short north in December. Yellow streetlights still on at 7:45. A few people walking their dogs in coats. Thank you, Dad. We didn't become different people after that. He is still someone who leads with judgment and arrives at tenderness late and sideways. I am still someone who doesn't need his approval to move forward. But we got a little more honest with each other. And that is worth something. The Series A closed in March. $19 million, led by the Chicago firm. I did not call my father to tell him first. I told my co-founder, who had been there for every single day of it, and then I called my college roommate, who screamed, and then I called my brother, who said, Dad is gonna lose his mind. He did, in a good way this time. My father left a voicemail after he saw the TechCrunch announcement. He said, I don't understand half of what they wrote, but I understand the number, $19 million. A pause. I told my partner today, I told him you built it. I want you to know I said your name out loud and I was not ashamed. His voice broke a little on that last part. I don't know if that means anything at this point, but I wanted you to know. I saved that voicemail. I haven't listened to it again, but I know it's there. The entrepreneurship program ran its first cohort in April. 18 women, 3 of them had engineering backgrounds, 2 had left medical careers. 1 had been a structural engineer for 9 years before she decided she wanted to build the software that engineers used instead of the structures themselves. I spoke to them on the first day. I told them the only thing I knew for certain, that the window between deciding to do something and other people understanding why you did it can be years long, and you have to be willing to live in that window without external proof that you're right. One of the women raised her hand afterward. She was in her early 30s, still wearing the lanyard from her previous job. Did you ever doubt yourself? She asked. I thought about all the Thanksgiving tables, about the shoulder pats and the air quotes and the she does tech stuff, and the door closing behind me in November. Yes, I said, but doubt is just information. It's not a verdict. She nodded like she needed to hear that. I needed to say it too. That's the thing they don't tell you about building something in silence. By the time the world finds out, you've already had the most important conversation, the one with yourself, alone at midnight, asking whether this is real or whether you've made a catastrophic mistake. And if you're still there at sunrise answering emails, you already know the answer. You just have to be patient enough to let everyone else catch up. There's a version of that Thanksgiving I used to replay in my head, the one where I stood up and said everything right there at the table. The ARR number, the customer count, the investor call I'd had 3 days prior, where I watched my father's face change in real time, where everyone saw it happen. I'm glad I didn't do that, not because I was being strategic, though I was, but because I've come to understand something about the way actions speak that words never quite can. My father dismissed what I was building before he ever understood what it was. No sentence I could have said at that table would have changed his mind. Only the work itself could do that, and only after it was already undeniable. What I've had to sit with, honestly, is that I'm not entirely clean in this story either. I stayed silent for 2.5 years, partly out of principle and partly out of pride. I wanted the reveal. I wanted the moment. There's something in me that needed him to see it all at once, fully formed, impossible to minimize. That's not purely virtuous. It's human. And I think being honest about that matters, because the story isn't really about my father. It's about what I chose to do with the pain he caused and whether I let it make me smaller or larger. I chose larger. That was the only real decision. What I learned, not in the abstract, but in the specific, lived 2 a.m. kind of way, is that integrity is not just about being honest with other people, it's about being honest with yourself when no one is watching and there's no audience for it. Every time I chose to keep building when I could have quit, every time I solved a problem instead of complaining about it, every time I treated a customer's frustration like it deserved a real answer, that was the work of becoming someone I could respect. My father's opinion of me is secondary to my own. It always was. I just had to learn that through experience rather than reasoning. The intelligence part, and I mean the real kind, not grades or credentials, that came from paying attention. From watching the construction industry and noticing what nobody was fixing. From listening to a project manager say, "This saved me 11 hours a week." And understanding that 11 hours multiplied across thousands of contractors is a business. Intelligence, to me, is the discipline of noticing what's actually there rather than what you've been told to see. My father looked at me and saw someone who had abandoned the family plan. I looked at the same situation and saw an opening. And the persistence, that one I can't make sound romantic, it was just stubbornness, honestly. It was closing my laptop at 1 a.m. and opening it again at 7. It was the 12th VC saying no and writing the email to the 13th anyway. It was sitting at that Thanksgiving table, eating quietly, knowing something they didn't, and choosing not to make it a scene. Persistence isn't dramatic. It mostly looks like just not stopping. My father said he was proud of me eventually. I saved the voicemail. I don't need to listen to it again to know it's there. That's about where we are now, not repaired, not broken, but honest in a way we never were before. That feels like enough. Some things don't get to be fully healed. They just get to be understood. What I want, if any of this lands with anyone, is for them to trust the window. That long stretch of time between deciding to do something and the world catching up to why you did it, live in that window without apology. Do the work. Be someone you can explain to yourself at midnight. The rest tends to follow.